Hello and welcome to this primary election debate for Democratic candidates for Arizona's Congressional District 5, representing much of the East Valley, including Gilbert, Queen Creek, and parts of Chandler and Mesa. The debate is sponsored by Clean Elections, the state's nonpartisan voter education agency. My name is Kathleen Babe.
And I'm Danielle Lerner, and we will be co-moderating today's debate. And we are sharing this debate as part of an effort to support democracy in Arizona through a partnership with the Citizens Clean Elections Commission, the Arizona Media Association, and Reister. It is a partnership designed to make these debates accessible to all voters in Arizona.
And that means this debate and dozens more between now and November will air on a long list of local TV stations, radio stations, and digital platforms, including support from local newspapers. It is a shared effort between hundreds of local media brands across Arizona. The format of this debate may be familiar to many of you out there, and we've tried to keep the rules simple. Each candidate will have up to 1 minute to make an opening statement, and the same for a closing statement. Candidates have drawn straws to determine the order of each of those portions of this debate. Throughout the debate, we will pose questions to each candidate, allow them to answer, and then make sure the other candidate has a chance to respond.
Now, whenever a question is directed to a specific candidate, only that candidate's microphone will be open. At all other times, every microphone will be open. And of course, we want to thank the voters all across Arizona who submitted questions for this debate. We have reviewed all of them to ensure every voice is heard. However, no candidates have been given advanced access to any of those questions. Now, additionally, candidates for this race will participate in a speed round at the end of tonight's conversation. And these questions have been given to candidates ahead of time, and they will have just 15 seconds to answer each one.
And Danielle, with that, let's introduce the Democratic primary candidates for this debate. Brian Hualde, Chris James, and Elizabeth Lee. We thank you all for being here tonight. We appreciate it. And Brian Hualde, you have the first opening statement. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Brian Hualde. I am an Arizona native, the only one in this race on the Democratic side. I'm a fourth-generation Arizonan. I was born right here in Phoenix. I am a husband. I am a father. I am a veteran. I served as a combat medic. And most recently, I am taking a step into politics because from my perspective, it seems like those in Washington have forgot what their job is, and that's to serve the people of this district and of our country. And so I saw a need for service again, and so I've decided to step up to use my knowledge and experience in life to make sure that working people in this district have a voice again, and that corporate interests no longer dictate the policy that gets passed in Washington. I want to get back to a time where the American dream is attainable for all people in this district, in this country again, and I want to be a true voice of service and someone that the constituents in this district specifically can trust again.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hualde. Chris James, you have 1 minute.
Thank you, everyone, for watching tonight. This debate is about you. This election comes down to a simple question. What does it take to win in our district? For more than 15 years, Democrats have tried to flip this seat. We've come up short, and that's just the reality. We're all tired of what's happening in Washington, D.C. We in the East Valley want a leader who understands the economy and has experience to lower our costs. That's the experience I bring to this race. I spent my whole career supporting small businesses and building economies. That was my focus when I was appointed by President Obama, and it has been my focus here in the East Valley as a nonprofit leader. I've earned support from Democrats, independents, labor, nonprofit, and tribal leaders because I know how to build a coalition. So tonight, ask yourself, who can win in November against a MAGA candidate in this district?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. James. And Ms. Lee, you have 1 minute.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Lee. I am running for Congress because I am tired of politicians debating problems that families are forced to live in real time. I'm a reproductive health nurse, a mom, a patient advocate, and someone who spent my entire career helping people navigate systems that too often fail them. Right now, so many families across Arizona are struggling just to make it work. Healthcare costs are rising. Housing costs are rising. Utility bills, gas, groceries, it's all on the rise. And meanwhile, too much of our politics has become about performance than actual solutions-driven issues. I understand what happens when decisions made in Washington collide with real people trying to raise families, build their futures, and pay their bills. And that's exactly why I'm asking for your vote on July 21st.
All right, thank you so much for those opening statements. Let's get right into our first question here. Mr. James, you touched on this a bit in your opening statement, but Congressional District 5 has long been a Republican-leaning district. Andy Biggs, who currently holds the seat, has done so for nearly a decade. And so my question is, what are you seeing or hearing that makes you think this district is ready to seriously consider a Democrat? Mr. Hualde, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Sure. So I've been knocking a lot of doors, and that's just part of what we're doing right now, trying to get out and meet as many people as possible. And it's become very clear that the people in this district don't like what's happening. During the primary, I focused specifically on Democratic doors, but you do hit some Republican doors, unfortunately. Not that that's a bad thing at this point, but most of the people I talk to aren't happy with what's happening in this country. The bread and butter issues that matter to most Americans are bipartisan issues. Affordability and inflation in the economy, those affect everyone, both Republicans, Democrats, and independents alike. There's no way around that. And so when I hear the responses from people in the community saying that they've had enough and they don't recognize their own party, it gives me more confidence to make sure that when we're out having these conversations, we're encouraging others to continue to have those difficult conversations with their neighbors as well. It is a very conservative district, District 5, and like you mentioned, it's been a Republican stronghold for a long time. I think this is our opportunity to change that. And I think that this is a time where we can take back a democracy and support the working people of this country again. And people on both sides of the House are starting to see that issue and are willing to cross that line and step over. At one point, people were telling me they didn't think that it's possible to flip this seat in this district. But as we see the special elections across the country reflecting a different story in other Republican stronghold districts, it's becoming very clear that people in this country want politicians, they want leadership and representation that is focusing on what's best for them. And that's what I want to bring to this seat, and I think that's why we're going to be successful in November to make sure a Democrat takes this seat.
And over to you, Mr. James.
I'm running on my experience. I'm running on my record. I had the honor to work in federal government as an executive, both at the U.S. Department of Treasury and at the Small Business Administration. While I was at the Small Business Administration, I oversaw 90 offices. We had an office in all 50 states. I had a $350 million budget, and I had 1,500 employees. Now, over my 20-year career, I have supported over $700 million to go right into the most underserved communities around the United States. And here specifically in Arizona, I have supported over $8 million of investments, helped about 400 plus businesses, and having those businesses access to over $100 million in contracts. I believe in relationships. Over the past 10 years, I've been doing advocacy work in Washington, D.C., and I believe there needs to be more bipartisanship. And that's really what our district's looking for. We're tired of the bipolar that's happened in our country. In Washington, I helped foster 2 bills that I testified in front of Congress. They were both signed into law, and now they're supporting communities even today. This is not a time for someone to have learning on the job experience. And let me tell you a personal story. My organization has lost over $8 million in the past year and a half to the DOGE cuts. Those dollars affected small businesses here in Arizona. Those dollars affected tribal communities around the country. And we see an administration that has really messed up. And we need a leader, and our district desperately wants a leader who can actually lead, not just follow. Thank you.
All right, and now Ms. Lee.
Look, my opponents can tell you what they believe. And I can tell you what happens when those beliefs collide with the real world. I've spent my career solving the consequences of failed public policy. And that's the exact kind of perspective that we need more of in Congress. In 2026, so many people across this district are scared. They're angry. And what they're realizing is that what we're doing right now is not working. And when we start with our shared values and work together from there, rather than starting with the things that we disagree on, that is how you're going to win. That's how I am going to win what is considered a heavily Republican district. I think it's also important to consider the fact that we are seeing elections take place all across the country, and women are beating men over and over and over in seats that have only ever traditionally been held by men. This seat, the CD5 House seat, has only ever been held by a white man. As a woman, as a nurse, I look to bring that common ground, building together, not breaking down, and starting with the things that unify us, so that we can bring change to this district. I think it's also very important to note that some of my opponents like to make comments about there being on-the-job training. And the last I checked, none of the three of us have served in Congress. And so all of us would be new to that role. And so with respect, the systems level problem solving that I've done over the course of my 15-plus year career in healthcare and in business is exactly the type of person that the folks of CD5 are looking for on both sides of the aisle.
All right, so let's get down to specifics then in talking about flipping this seat, because independent voters outnumber registered Democrats in District 5, so you will need them to win. How will you and your campaign convince and appeal to the voters who are independent or even moderates that tend to lean conservative that your platform better represents them than your Republican opponents? Mr. James.
Look, we can't have a one-issue candidate win in a deep red district, someone that might be suited for a blue district. We need people that can appeal to everybody in the district, Republicans, independents, Democrats. We need people that can bring leadership into the district and open the door for everybody and not just talk to one side of a party. Look, I love burgers, and my wife and I were going to the store the other day. We were looking at the price of beef, and literally we were thinking, do we want to buy that package of beef? Because it's 20% more than what it was a year and a half ago. Everybody in our district feels that pain. Everybody. And it doesn't matter what party. And as I've gone around and I've talked to people from Republicans to Democrats to independents, a lot of times I get yelled at the beginning. But when we finally get down to it, what we really all believe, the core values that we all believe on how we can fix this country, we may not agree on everything. And that's something that we can all say, hey, we don't agree on these things over here, but these 70% of things we agree on. But the only way that we're going to beat a MAGA candidate is to have someone that appeals to everybody. And that's really important.
And Mr. Hualde, your response to that as far as how you work to appeal to folks on both sides?
Yeah, a great question. I think that it's really important that we focus on those things that matter to everyone. The working people of this country all have the same issues. Healthcare costs are going up, groceries are expensive, gas is expensive, access to healthcare is expensive, and utilizing healthcare access even puts people farther in the hole. People are getting buried by debt just by doing the things that everyday people should do. So having those conversations with the independents and let them know that their voices will be heard and their needs will be met, I think that's a really important thing. And I think that that's going to resonate with the moderate Republicans. It's going to moderate with the Democrats. It's going to resonate with the independents as well. And so having those conversations and letting them know, look, we have a lot of the similar wants and needs for this country, and that's going to be the most important part to making sure that we're all on the same page and can progress through this race. And it's going to be a challenge when you have really loud voices from the Republican side that continue to spew this rhetoric of hate, this marginalization of these populations. And it's hard to overcome things when people aren't fully educated. So part of the job as a candidate that I see is making sure that the people in this district are getting the appropriate information. And so getting out there, knocking the doors, letting them know, hey, you're hearing this, but are you verifying it? A lot of the information you get isn't necessarily true. And I see this time and time again. We saw this recently as a group when one of our Republican counterparts came up, and his main talking points were immigration and the drug crisis and fentanyl spewing over the border. And, you know, it's hard to sit there and watch someone just attack marginalized populations rather than address the real issues that the working people in this country have.
And Ms. Lee, you talked a lot about working together and that bipartisanship. So how do you propose to do that, not just in listening to your constituents, but also in Washington? How do you work with folks on the other side of the aisle?
Yeah, again, I think that when you boil it down, the things that matter to all of us are pretty darn similar right now. The math in this district to win in a red district like this is we have to secure 90% turnout of the Dems. We have to secure 60% of the independents, and we have to peel off 10% of the Republicans. And that is very doable in a year like 2026, where folks are more civically engaged than I think we've ever seen, at least in our adult lifetimes. People are very hungry for something that is different. And when I knock doors, I am invited in a lot. And often you'll have a household that maybe one spouse is a Republican and the other is a Democrat. And at the end of the day, when I leave, the end of that visit, they almost always, the Republican, whoever of that, the two of them that is, says, wow, we agree on so much more than I thought. And so when we lead with values, when we lead with, you know what, tell me what keeps you up at night. Because I don't presume to know what keeps you up at night, because it varies from what keeps me up at night. But I know that there's something keeping all of us up at night right now. And there are tangible things that we can do as a community right now, well before this election, to come together and show our community that Republican or Democrat, we are all really suffering and struggling with this affordability crisis in healthcare, in the economy, in education. And I think that folks are really starting to see that the way forward is together.
Well, thank you for that. And let's move on to cost of living. You've all brought it up as one of the big issues, major issues happening in the East Valley. But let's drill down on that, because one of the ways that families are being squeezed is through utility and energy bills. SRP recently raised base prices and flat monthly fees, and APS is fighting for a rate hike and the power to automatically every single year increase electricity bills. So what federal action, if you're elected to CD5, would you take to protect consumers in this capacity? Mr. Hualde.
Well, that's a great question. And so when it comes down to the electric bills in this country, or in this district, and the water bills and the increasing rates that everyone in the district is experiencing, it's going to be important that we don't turn our back on alternative sources of energy like we've been seeing. We need to make sure that we are utilizing things like wind power, solar power, nuclear power, other clean sources of energy that can make sure that we have the ability to keep the rates down to a point where people can continue to survive. It shouldn't be a choice of keeping your lights on, keeping the air conditioning on, just because the powers that be have decided to raise your rates to increase the bottom line for the companies that are providing the electricity. And I think from a federal standpoint, making sure that there's some oversight into how quickly and how much rates are being increased is something that needs to be addressed. It shouldn't be a situation where families have to decide whether or not they're going to eat or pay their electric bills. And I think we need to make sure we subsidize some more programs for people in need of emergency funds for their utilities in situations where they have fallen on hard times. There are a lot of times where families slip into a situation where they have unexpected expenses. And unfortunately, in this district right now, families don't have big nest eggs and they're not readily prepared to take on additional expenses in their lives. And so having programs in place to make sure that we protect families in those types of situations is going to be important. Having those funds available for those families is something that I think that we need to prioritize.
Yeah, and of course, not just utilities, but also just cost of living, inflation in general. And so, Mr. James, are there any specific policies that you would champion in your first term that voters would actually feel some relief within a couple of years?
Absolutely. The first thing, let's start ending the Trump tariffs. Those are a tax on every one of them. Every time we go to the store and we buy a good, if it's at Walmart or Target or even Ace Hardware, we buy something, that tariff is passed to us. Now, other people are saying, hey, the corporations are paying their fair share. That is not true. It is a tax. It's never worked. And those tariffs just trickle right down to us. I would also restore the massive cuts made in the healthcare in the Trump One Big Beautiful Bill. I mean, that's one thing we can do to help people that have lost their Medicaid care. And as we think about supporting those people and supporting the folks on Medicaid, we have time. This administration has money to pay for billionaires, but not people that are needing health care. And then lastly, what we've seen going on right now, we are in another conflict, a big war. We've seen our gas prices soar, and this is a war that was made by choice. This is a war that Trump says, let's go to war with this. Restoring the War Powers Act, and I know there was a bill that came through this week, would stop this nonsense of trying to start these conflicts all over the country so that certain people can line their pockets. And the government's reckless deficit spending that's going on right now, it adds an inflationary pressure that takes money away from every American, everybody in this district, you, me, my colleagues here. We can be fiscally disciplined and still invest in America.
And Ms. Lee, how would you propose and what policies would you specifically champion to bring down the cost of living for East Valley residents?
Yeah, I'm so glad that this topic is being talked about so much because the Arizona families right now are projected to need to pay around $4,000 more per year this year for basic goods due to the tariffs. And so beyond actually having Congress step up and put some legislative options on the table that are there today, we can restore things like the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit. The child tax credit previously cut child poverty results by a staggering amounts. Nationally, I think it was by about half. So reinstating that is a no-brainer, and it gives relief directly to families. But I think it's important to know that the $5 gas that was brought to us by, happened in the previous administration, was brought to us by Russia invading Ukraine. The $5 gas today is brought to us by Donald Trump illegally invading Iran. And so Congress today can shut that down, put an end to that to bring prices down right away. I'd like to share a story of a woman in Chandler who shared with me what this affordability crisis means to her, specifically as it relates to electricity. She shared with me that she unplugs her all of her electronic devices and her appliances every single night so that she can save electricity because every month she can't even afford to pay the entire bill. So she's falling behind each month more and more, all while we see data centers sucking up energy at crazy rates and corporations are not being asked to pay their fair share of those costs. And so at the end of the day, we have to put money back in families' pockets right away, and easy ways to do that right off the top are to have Congress act to end the war in Iran, to fight the illegal tariffs, and to restore the child tax credit.
You mentioned the data centers moving in, a lot of development happening, particularly in CD5 right now, and that can make it difficult to find affordable housing. I know that's also a top issue going into this primary that voters want to hear about. And so what is the biggest reason, in your opinion, that housing has become unaffordable in the East Valley, and what specifically can be done to mitigate that? Ms. Lee, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I think this is a really simple situation of corporate ownership over our single-family properties. We see staggering amounts of corporate ownership of single-family properties, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 30% of our single-family properties in our district are owned by private equity. And what that does is that drives the price of housing up for everybody. Beyond that, we have to recognize that right now in this country in 2026, the average first-time homebuyer is 40 years old. And so if we are going to fulfill a promise to them that you grow up and you work hard and you can get a house, we are going to need to work much harder to bring affordable housing options to people. Right now, the math just doesn't add up. The math, if you're working even a $25 an hour job with rent and the cost of everything going up, it's just unsustainable. Something I will add is that public pressure works. And so I was a part of a group of organizations that came together around the Chandler Data Center. And we held the Chandler City Council in 5 hours of public comment to make sure that they clearly understood that the residents of Chandler did not want that data center. And guess what? They voted against it. And we see those same sorts of things happening when we stand up and we fight back. And so it's ridiculous to know that people are sleeping on the streets while billionaires are gobbling up our single-family homes. And that's something we can do something about on day one.
And to follow up on that, are you talking about restricting corporations so that Arizona families can fairly compete
That's
who are
right.
currently being outbid? And how would you suggest making those restrictions? What would they be specifically?
Specifically, I think we have to limit the amount of single-family homes that we're willing to have owned by corporations in our communities. And that starts with coming together with all of the local leadership, the municipalities in the district, and coming together to understand that what is the inventory of housing that we need to house the people of this district, and then look to how can we put some restrictions in place to prevent single-family homes being bought up by those corporations before families have that first hack at the house.
Mr. James, over to you now. What is one federal policy that could actually meaningfully lower housing costs for Arizona families?
I want to just touch base on data centers first because I know that's an important question that I want to talk about. This is an outrageous number. 40% of data centers are being built in high water scarcity zones. And that is outrageous. It is draining us, and Congress has the ability to help with that. As of housing, one thing I would do, I'm going to start with a story because I like telling stories. And my wife and I have been married for 25 years. We bought our first house when we were both under 30. Now, and we paid $25,000 for that house. Now, we were in rural North Carolina, and that house had plywood as the walls, the outside walls. But when I think about my children, thinking of their first homes, that's a pipe dream to be able to buy their house. So the first thing I would do if I was in Congress, I would expand the first-time home buyer tax credit. Arizona's families, and this is another thing that can be done, Arizona's families should not be losing their shot at home ownerships to these hedge funds. Congress has the tools to change that, and I will use them. And I'd also reform Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, lending rules for mortgages to make it more accessible to everyday families. Because shelter is not a want, it is a need. And it is time that we treat it that way. And also, my organization, we've developed what's called a community development financial institution. We had the opportunity to get some funding from the EPA. It was called Solar for All. and it was going to help put solar panels on housing, affordable housing. This administration cut that program. They even took the money away, and it affected housing here in Arizona.
All right, thank
All
you.
right, thank you for that. And Mr. Hualde, your priorities, your plans to make homeownership more accessible for folks in CD5.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone's kind of on par with the same thoughts as to why houses are so expensive in CD5 and across the country and across Arizona. Corporations have been available to, or had been able to purchase large groups of properties and kind of fix the rents as they would like to see them. It almost becomes subscription housing, if you will. They set the rents to a price where families just can't get ahead. You're at a point where they know that you can afford the rent, maybe, but you might not be able to afford the money to save for a down payment and actually pursue that American dream of owning a home. And so there are some things we can do to make this better for the working families here, to be able to actually purchase homes and be part of their societies and be able to pursue those things that they want. And I think incentivizing our builders is where we could start. Making sure that affordable housing, single-family housing, and large groups of property that are more affordable for first-time home buyers is important. I think that providing tax credits to the builders that are willing to take the time to build for those families is something that we should be able to provide. I think that when we have these corporations owning large groups of properties, we often see a lot of houses going unlived in. And I think that that should be addressed as well. I think that these corporations that buy up properties and are just waiting for people to pay top dollar should be penalized for not having these houses lived in. And so we have a housing crisis. We have people on the streets, yet we have houses that aren't lived in because they're owned by corporations and they refuse to adjust the prices to make it functional for working people to live in a home. And so those would be my solutions to some of the housing issues we have: incentivizing builders, increasing the first-time homebuyer tax credit, making sure that we have more single-family houses available for the people of this district.
All right, thank you. And Mr. James, as well as my colleague, brought up data centers. And so we want to touch on that in the context of long-term water security, which is a very big deal here in Arizona. As you know, a battle going on between states right now over the Colorado River. Now, while they bring in great tech investment, and a lot of people are on board with that, a single data center consumes millions of gallons of water for cooling, not to mention heat waste that can also raise the temperature outdoors. You add to that the apartment buildings and the developing going on, and there's an increasing water demand that we may not be able to pay the bill for. So what specifically, starting with you, Mr. James, since you brought it up, what incentives or guardrails would you put in place to protect these local resources for CD5?
Over my career, I've had a lot of opportunity to meet with the Natural Resources Committee in Washington, the House Natural Resources Committee. I've testified in front of the House Natural Resource Committee. And Congress, and that, by the way, the reason I say that, that's the first committee that I want to be on when I get to Congress, the Natural Resources Committee. Congress controls the budget of the Bureau of Reclamation. I'll fight for full funding of the Colorado Drought Contingency Planning and Infrastructure. And I actually presented the World Trade Organization a few years ago on how governance can balance corporate expansion with community protection. What's happening with the data centers here in Arizona's groundwater is horrible. It's a textbook case of boosting corporate profits while families bear the costs, and it's just not working. What we need to do is make sure that those data centers pay their fair share, the ones that are already existing, and making sure that our communities have community planning grants so that when they're planning their communities, they can make their own opinions on how they work with data centers. And I will fight to expand those planning grants for our Arizona cities and towns so that they will have the resources to lead and grow their community and not have federal government impose on those. I'll also invest to support investments in water recycling and reuse technology, proven cost effectively and already working in some parts of Arizona. And I'll also oppose any overreach that strips Arizona of its negotiating power in the Interstate Water Compact. States and tribes must remain at the table.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Lee, you also brought up data centers in one of your responses. And so what are your plans as far as balancing development with our water shortage?
I think the public needs a lot more transparency around the real implications of data centers. I think that developers have big promises. They promise us a lot of jobs, but what they don't say is that those jobs are temporary. But what we don't know specifically is how impactful are the negative health effects of data centers. We're talking everything from sound pollution to debris that actually clogs up wells and home appliances. We're seeing in some places across the country where data centers have been allowed to just sort of move in, that people are losing their houses over the negative and untold impacts of data centers. So what I would propose right out of the gate is to study and be very forthcoming and forthright and transparent about what the negative implications of this are. Because it doesn't matter how great AI data centers are. If they take our water, we have no future. There is no Arizona without conserving our water. And I think too, of the last 10 to 15 years, I mean, I've lived in Arizona for 16 years now, something like that. And I can remember teaching my kids about water conservation, teaching my children about how precious a resource water is. And we are not holding data centers and the billionaire developers behind them to that same standard. And so I would really call for some real public transparency and accountability around the actual real life impacts of these data centers on our communities before we just start giving developers carte blanche to move right in.
And Mr. Hualde, your thoughts on data centers that are looking to move into the East Valley?
Absolutely. Well, unfortunately, data centers seem like they're here to stay. But we do have a lot of things that we can do to make sure that how they're being utilized is best for our communities. And like you said, we do bring in a lot of money into the communities from these data centers and some jobs. But at what expense? Like I said, I grew up here in Arizona, born and raised. I'm the only one up here that can say that, who can say that they've been through the droughts in Arizona and know exactly what it feels like to have water restrictions in northern Arizona, and know what it's like to come down to the heat and know that people are struggling to make sure they have the water they need. And so I think it's important to make sure we hold these companies accountable and make them provide the data we need to make sure what they're doing is going to be long-term sustainable. I don't think that burden should fall on the communities or the local governments. I think that if they're going to utilize a huge amount of one of our resources, they need to step up and do the investigations and figure out how their products and their buildings and their massive uses of water are going to affect our communities in the long run. I also think that water usage in this country, or in this state, is going to be talked about a lot in the upcoming months. This is going to go to the Bureau of Reclamation soon because the basin states couldn't come up with an agreement to who will get this water. And so having someone that's willing to fight for our tribal populations to make sure that they have the water they need, and our agricultural sites all across Arizona have the water they need, is going to be extremely important. And I think that restricting water usage is something that we need to do better in Arizona. I've golfed a little bit, and I know that a lot of people love it. I don't necessarily think that I need 5 golf courses within 10 minutes of my home. I'm sorry, I'm going to make a lot of people angry with that statement, but I'm sorry, we don't do well enough conserving water in our state.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hualde. And considering your health care background as a nurse practitioner, and Ms. Lee, you're also a nurse, we want to dive into healthcare, and one of the defining issues under that umbrella is reproductive rights, and they have been dramatically changing, as you know. While Arizona voters overwhelmingly passed Prop 139 to protect abortion access in the state constitution, the reality is that federal bans and federal cuts of funding could override those protections. So what is your specific legislative strategy you will use to either block restrictions on, say, abortion pills, or to restrict or protect funding for low-income Arizonans who actually rely on these clinics for health care? Ms. Lee, we'll start with you.
I think it's so important to recognize that healthcare is between a patient and their doctor. Healthcare does not involve the ideological whims of politicians, and especially when it comes to reproductive freedom. And with what you said, that with Proposition 139 passing by a greater margin than even the president won in 2024, the voters spoke very clearly. But something that we're seeing not just in the Arizona state legislature, but in legislatures all across the country, is despite the people speaking loudly and clearly about their will, our Republican state legislatures are going right to work to undo those protections. And so something that we have to call more attention to is not even redefining, but keeping abortion and reproductive rights and reproductive care in the room where they belong. I am a board-certified reproductive health and infertility nurse. I've spent many times in rooms with women on the worst days of their lives and the best days of their lives, and never did those rooms involve a third party. We must be very clear with our state legislatures, with the people that we choose to represent us in executive state government. We look at Attorney General Chris Mays and how she has been inconsequential in the fight for reproductive freedom to keep those decisions between doctors and their patients. And at the end of the day, sadly, I have many stories of women who did not survive these draconian laws that are trying to block access to things like mifepristone, which is one of the safest medications on planet Earth. It is most certainly safer than Viagra. So we have got to get back to a place where our doctors are practicing medicine, not our insurance companies and not our legislators.
Mr. James, you have cited navigating the red tape and high insurance costs associated with the healthcare system while caring for your father. And so how does that shape your priorities heading to Congress as far as ways that you can advocate to help support some of these families who are experiencing similar things that you've been through?
Absolutely. You know, and you're not going to find a lot of difference between the three of us on this issue. We can all agree that it's a broken system. And I think I do want to talk a little bit about reproductive rights because I respect that this is a deeply personal issue for many people of faith in our district. And I'm not going to dismiss that. What I will not accept is that government making medical decisions that belong between a patient and their doctor is not acceptable. I will protect access to the abortion pill by mail. Medication abortion is safe, as we've heard Nurse Lee say. The bottom line is it's a personal decision with your doctor, and it belongs to patients. And I also agree when I support IVF. And let's be honest, what's happening in that industry as well. For-profit fertility clinics are charging desperate families extraordinary sums of money because they can't. Oftentimes, when people want a child, they're in pain. They want a child, and Nurse Lee can tell me how much. I think oftentimes it's up to $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 a cycle. And these clinics are they're out of reach for working families and profiting from desperation. So Congress should act to bring those costs and transparency down, because I think a lot of folks have made a good amount of money on sometimes a desperate time when they want a child. And speaking of transparency, I do have a question for Nurse Lee. Why haven't you filed your financial disclosures? Because they were due in October to the House Ethics Committee. I know Brian and I filed. We just recently filed another one. Are you hiding something? I'm just curious there.
You have 1 minute to respond to that.
It's a strange diversion from a topic that is the one you asked about, and that is family building and protecting folks' right to family building. Very briefly, I will say that we were just notified by the FEC just last week that there was a reporting error in our software that did not accurately itemize all of our expenses in the right categories. It all spit it out as a generic expense. We are rectifying that right now with the FEC and have no concerns there. But back to reproductive rights and what matters there, I'd like to point out the fact that I helped build and grow one of Gilbert, Arizona's actually the country's most successful IVF clinics. And I think I really want to push back against the idea that the clinics are the bad guy in this, because while the government has failed to act, while the government has failed to mandate infertility coverage from an insurance perspective, the clinics themselves have been the ones fighting tooth and nail to find ways to bring the cost of cycles down for patients directly.
All right, Ms. Lee, thank you for that. Mr. Hualde, how does your hands-on clinical experience as a nurse shape your healthcare proposals and policies that could help bring some of those costs down?
Yeah, as a nurse practitioner, it's something that I see every day, right? I also have 2 disabled children, and so I navigate the healthcare system from a lot of different angles. I've worked in the healthcare system from a lot of different perspectives. First as a combat medic, doing pediatric intensive care, working as a pediatric burn nurse, now working as a pediatric surgery nurse practitioner. I take care of the most vulnerable populations, and making sure that people have access to healthcare is absolutely a right in this country, and I don't know why we can't get that right. But there are some things we can do. We saw the subsidies for healthcare premiums go away. This has raised prices a lot. It makes it so people that don't want to go seek access to care anymore because they don't want the high bills that they're going to get stuck with. They're essentially paying twice. They have increased premiums, so now the money they would typically be spending on their deductibles is now what they see as just another payment, and then it's a real challenge for these families to overcome that. And I think that what we should start with is trying to make sure that everyone in this country has some access to at least one preventive visit every year that's subsidized by the government. And I think that that will go a long way in making sure that people have some basic level of access to care while we strive to get to a point where everyone just has access to care that they don't have to pay for. Because most countries are able to figure that out, but right now our for-profit healthcare system and insurance structure doesn't allow for that in this country. I think that taking care of the prescription drug costs is extremely important. I think that having patents on these drugs that last forever, that can be modified and can be evergreened, and these companies that make these medications that often have funding from the federal government get to exponentially increase their profits based on patent holding and their ability to continue to charge exorbitant prices for drugs when it's unnecessary. We should be able to fast track these medications to be generic medications available to everyone.
All right, thank you for that response. It is now time to shift into the speed round. Again, now these candidates have been given these questions ahead of time and only have 15 seconds to answer each one.
As soon as our first candidate answers, we'll simply move down the line to the next candidate to keep it moving. So we want to begin with you, Mr. Hualde. What is your most important issue on day one?
Finding the seat. No, I'm just kidding. My most important issue on day one is addressing the affordability issues for families in this district, making sure that we are, from day one, addressing some of the things that will put money back into the pockets of the working Americans in this district.
All right, Mr. James.
Economy, economy, economy. That's the most important thing.
All right, Ms. Lee.
Day one, we have to stop the egregious overreach of executive power. It is what is behind all of the other crises that take place. And so we must put that to a stop day one and then get to work to bring health care and all the other costs down.
What is a win for this district that you believe only you can secure, Mr. Hualde?
Well, I think that my background allows me to converse with a lot of different people. Being a veteran, being a healthcare provider, I can cross the aisle on a lot of different issues. So I think making sure our veterans are well taken care of is something that I'll be able to accomplish, and people with disabilities are the populations that I'll be able to help the most in this district.
All right, Mr. James, to you.
We have lost tens of millions of dollars of cuts from this administration right here in our district, including we've lost cuts to, I've just recently read, 2 hospitals that could even close in our district due to cuts. What I will bring back is resources back home.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Lee.
Yeah, a win only I can serve this district is sending the first woman ever to Congress to represent Congressional District 5, and somebody specifically who diagnoses and solves operational problems and then is tasked with executing their solutions.
And Mr. Hualde, how will you balance the demanding schedule of Washington, D.C. and remain accessible to the people in the district?
That's a challenge by being accessible, number one, being here and present in the district when I'm not in Washington, having a team here available that will communicate with me the needs of constituents that don't think their needs are being met. So first and foremost is just being accessible.
Mr. James.
Open more offices, I believe, in monthly town halls, even if it's a virtual monthly town halls. And I'm at a good stage of my life. So my wife and I can easily balance going back and forth from Washington to the district.
And Ms. Lee.
I believe so deeply in co-governance, and I think that we've seen a lot of members of Congress, like Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva, very clearly show how you can balance the work in the district and the work in D.C., and I would follow their direction.
All right, and the final question in the lightning round, Mr. Hualde, what do you love the most about Arizona?
The wonderful people. It's a beautiful state, and I've seen so many natural disasters, so many crises happen in the state. The resilience of the American people is what I absolutely love about Arizona, and that won't go away.
All right, Mr. James.
When I think of Arizona, I think about family. Not only my family, but other people's families, community, beauty of nature, and Arizona's my home.
And Ms. Lee.
For me, what I love most about Arizona is that this has been a wonderful place to raise my family. As a poor kid from Ohio, I don't know that I ever thought I could live somewhere so beautifully and be quite so successful, and I have Arizona to thank for that.
All right, thank you to all of the candidates for answering those questions. It is now time for closing statements. Each of you will have 1 minute, and we ask that you try to stick to that minute so that we don't have to cut you off there. Ms. Lee, you have the first closing statement.
Absolutely. Tonight, you heard candidates who care deeply about Arizona, and I really respect that. What I bring to this race is a very unique, systems-oriented perspective that's shaped not just by my lifetime as a patient, but by my years in healthcare leadership, in advocacy, and in operational redesign. I understand not just what policies should do, but how they actually succeed or fail in real systems affecting real people. I know how to identify those operational failures and build scalable solutions, and Congress is over talking points. We need people who are going to go to Congress who understand implementation and accountability and how systems affect everyday human lives. That is the perspective that I will bring to Washington every single day as your first Congresswoman.
All right, thank you. And Chris James, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. The East Valley is growing fast. We need a leader who can hit the ground running, a representative who can actually execute and deliver real solutions on lowering cost, bringing resources back to invest into our district. This race also has national impact. Republicans think they've guaranteed a House majority with gerrymandering and the dirty tricks before any of us have even cast a ballot. Flipping this district throws a wrench into that scheme. No one was expecting this district to be competitive, but it is. With the right candidate, this is our one chance. I am not a career politician. I am a proven CEO, nonprofit president, and former federal executive who have delivered results. We can't win with someone who's not transparent, who's a one-topic candidate, who's better suited for a deep blue district. We have an open seat. We have a leading MAGA candidate who's chest deep in scandal, and this year could be a blue wave.
All right, thank you, Mr. James, for that. And Mr. Hualde, you have 1 minute for your closing statement.
Thank you, and thank you, ladies, for having us today and hosting such a wonderful debate. This is going to be a very important election this cycle. It's important that we put someone in place that's going to be able to help restore the democracy in this country and make sure that working Americans and working Arizonans have a voice in Congress. We need to do things that are going to make people successful in their day-to-day lives. We need stronger job training. We need to make sure that our families struggling with childcare or struggling to take care of their loved ones and decide whether or not they should take the day off of work because they can't afford it are taken care of with things like paid family medical leave. And as a representative, I can promise some things. I will be accessible. I won't be hard to find. I won't lie. I will always seek to tell the truth to the best of my ability, and I will fight. I will fight for my family, for your family, and every Arizonan and every American in this country that needs a voice.
All right, we want to thank you all for your participation in this. We really appreciate it. This wraps up this primary debate with the Democratic candidates for Arizona's Congressional District 5. As a reminder, the Arizona primary election is on July 21st and early voting starts June 24th. All registered voters can participate in the primary, including independents. The voter registration deadline is June 22nd. To register to vote, head to azcleanelections.gov.
And there are a lot of offices up for election this year, so we will be hosting debates all through the summer and fall. Head to azmedia.org to see a list of every local media partner, plus upcoming debates, and where you can find them on TV, radio, and digital platforms.
You can also see the full debate schedule, learn more about clean elections, and submit questions for future debates by heading to azcleanelections.gov. On behalf of our partners at Clean Elections, the Arizona Media Association, Reister, and Sneaky Big Studios, we thank you so much for joining us.